Good afternoon. It's 9th of January 2024. This is an article from today's Times. I'll give you a link on the next slide because it's only fair. And this, when I read this article, I instantly thought of obviously FDI because it's an American company that were going to invest in London. And also it's about political conflict between the Mayor of London and the Conservative Party. So we're coming up to a general election soon, for example. The Mayor of London is well known for its environmental policies. We've got the ultra low emission zone, which has recently been extended in London. This is not in the article. But this is also, when we're talking about FDI, this is also about those skills that possibly come in. And the image you can see here is of the Las Vegas equivalent of the Stratford Sphere. So not only with FDI does money come into the UK, in this case from the United States, but also those skills. Don't forget those skills and experience that they could bring in as well. And we've got the brand value of this as well. But who would want to live in Stratford next to this great big glowing ball? Well, that's why it's been declined. So just a quick overview. There's the link to the article. You can soon Google it by the title. And I've not included the article in this for obvious copyright reasons, but there are some quotes here, and hopefully the Times won't mind. So just an overview of the article quickly. So they cancelled the project. We can see some stats about the 21,500 capacity. That's quite a nice figure to have, because you imagine the people coming in for events like, I don't know, Kylie concert or Cirque du Soleil or, you know, something like that. That's a massive amount of tourism coming into London anyway. This might bring even more people in. I'm thinking circular flow of income, macroeconomic objectives, lowering unemployment, increasing local and national GDP, you know, the tax that the government would get from this linked into government spending. There's lots of things you could do with this. Political disputes. This is why this is going to be a PESTLE exploration, which we'll go on to. We can see this turf war. I've quoted that for you. We've got a bit of Michael Gove in here about levelling up and the conflict going on between them and the the Mayor of London. So Gove wants to bring loads of jobs and wealth and all those sorts of things, and clearly Sadiq Khan wants to look after the local residents who probably don't want this great big glowing ball of light next to them, and even more traffic, because we've seen lots of development going on in that area anyway, and leading to abandonment. They basically dropped the contract today, and they might be moving it to Teesside. Well, they've got an airport, but is there as much tourism going there? This might be those 20 marker type of questions. Should they open up in London or should they open up in Teesside? I'm thinking London, but we'll see. So local concerns, this brings into social. So it could be the light pollution, like it's mentioned here. It could be lots of other things that are out there. The increased traffic, for example. It could be there's not enough skills, so it's increasing migration into the area. There could be house prices could go up because of extra demand. House prices could go down because it's next to this thing. So yes, those sorts of things fit in nicely into PESTLE. And we've got obviously the implications of foreign direct investment. Not only is it money, but it's also skills. So if the money's not coming in for this project, maybe the skills aren't coming in, and then maybe this has a ripple effect across the UK economy in this type of events activity. Okay, and because this is so well known, I've got Madison Square Garden group there. Well, clearly we know what they're initially famous for. And also you've got this well-known billionaire. So these are all about the brand identity of this project, which could encourage future investment into the UK. This is not just about short-term FDI, this is possibly about long-term future FDI from other firms or this firm in Teesside. Maybe they want to open one in London and up north. At the moment, they're not opening any. So quick reminder of PESTLE. You'll notice I've extended social. So socio-cultural, social is also about culture, local culture, national culture. And I know you'll know that from social, but depending which textbook you read, depends what words they use. The rest of them are self-explanatory. Yeah, you understand what it's about. You've done this in theme 3. So political, here's your definition. I'm sure you can read. And if I was doing a PESTLE type question, the first thing I would do is I'd go to the case study and I would say, where's the evidence for political? Well, I'm going to put a quotation mark around it, circle it. I'm going to put a P next to it possibly, so I know where it is. And we can see the political challenges and the interferences that have got in the way of this. Political conflict, that positioning that's been going on in the article once you read it, has actually delayed everything. Delaying is money, delaying is possible uncertainty of the future, and then they've pulled the plug. So economic, we know, and we're thinking about links into circular flow of income, macroeconomic objectives, and here's some evidence to do with the economy. Okay, so they've got lots of these projects, they're doing really well, and they were going to bring this money in, but they wanted the government participation in the project. Was that financial? Was that smoothing out the planning consents? I'll leave you to decide on that, but they wanted the government to participate in this. They didn't want it just, can we give us planning permission and then we'll take all the risk. Like lots of big investment in the UK, for instance, the battery factory in Somerset that we've talked about in class before, that came with significant government investment. That sort of subsidy will lower the cost of production in some ways, but lower the cost of building the product and therefore increasing possible profit margins because they haven't got to pay it back maybe. Okay, so social or socio-cultural. And again, we're looking for some examples here. Campaigners claimed that glare from the LEDs could be disruptive and dangerous. That's very much social. Technological, well, there's, it tells you about the high resolution LEDs. Depending on the focus of the PESTLE question, depends if you would use this. I think because this is directly linked to FDI, you'll see that when you see the question, I personally would probably not even mention technologies, unless it's in context with another part of PESTLE. Environmental is quite big for this question, I think, because with social, they've got the environmental concerns. And we can see we've got light pollution and things like that. So it's quite important. Legal, well, planning permission is mentioned in the case study. So that's definitely linked to the legal hurdles. We've talked about ease of doing business in country as a market. And if the planning is difficult to get through in the UK anyway, then the politicians get involved. No wonder they've dropped out, because it's been drawn out more and more and more. And I wouldn't want to even think about how many millions of pounds they've spent on legal fees to then pull the plug. So here's the question. Remember, step 1, identify the hooks. Okay, so assess the likely impact. So we would write our hook there. And then we're looking for impact on what? And it's straight away, it's on FDI. So we need to demonstrate an understanding of FDI. And we've already said money plus skills coming in from outside of the UK. And we've seen this at the beginning of the question, which is using your knowledge of PESTLE. So we need to demonstrate an understanding of PESTLE and a demonstration of FDI. Now, our structure of our answer will be around 2 factors of PESTLE, which is why we've identified some evidence already. And then we will talk about the likely impact on FDI. Now, this is FDI in the UK. It's not just FDI to do with this Madison Square Garden group project. This could be short term to do with them, longer term about them investing in the UK, and longer term other people investing in the UK. Do big American multinationals really want to open up in London, where political rivalry can get in the way of opening businesses, when they can open up somewhere else and probably get a few £100 million as a golden handshake? So that's what we have to think about when we're answering these types of questions. Short versus medium term, in this case, is quite a good structure if you wanted to, but if you don't mention PESTLE, you will get capped. Okay, this is not just about the likely impact on FDI. So, impact on FDI, identify the knowledge, well, PESTLE and FDI, and the question states using knowledge of PESTLE, so you've got to use knowledge in your point to conclusion and your justification. Identify 2 PESTLE related factors in the case study and identify 2 potential impacts. Short versus longer term is quite nice. Circular flow of income, impact on jobs, impact on the GDP in the local economy, for example. It's quite easy to come up with multiple impacts from this case study. So start writing. At that point, literally at the top of the page is sort of my plan anyway. It's a 10 marker, assess the likely impact. You could do P impact positive, P impact negative, answer the question in context and then justify. Consider without, so without this FDI or without this negative relationship that's in this case study. It's really, really important that you manage your time. So if you're quite slow at writing, then I would stick to a basic structure. If you're quite quick at writing, you can write a P, however, answer the question, justify in 12 minutes, then go for it. Practice your timing in full papers to see which you should be using. Now, I've put the picture in here as an example, just something to talk about, really. If you ever see a picture in a case study in a paper, I'll be very surprised. But if you did, you could class it as part of the case study. Excuse me. So we've got this great big ball of light with lots of not so much bright stuff in the background. Now, that might look nice in Las Vegas with lots of other lights. However, parts of London and residential areas, maybe not, even though there's a football stadium next to this one if it was going to be built. So we look at our point. Our first point is political factors. We're straight into PESTLE. There's no messing about. Political factors can affect impact, FDI. If you hear all the noise in the background, it's in the boys' house. Explain the point. 3 chains of argument. I'll put them in bold for you. There might be a bit more there. Political stability and policy predictability are key determinants of FDI. In this case, then explain that. Madison Square Garden Group decision was influenced by political turbulence evidenced by the clash between the Mayor of London and the government. This uncertainty likely created a perception of risk, discouraging investment. Okay, the investment is that FDI, and the Madison Square Garden is the context, and not quite explained that they're American yet, but at least it's to do with this investment. Evidence. Now, we've got evidence in here already. I've listed it separately because I want to explain the P structure properly. However, this has already got evidence in here. We'd probably get away with this, but we're looking for the evidence to do with the influence or the investment. Now, this is a bit of a repeat of what's already in here. So actually, I wouldn't write this because it's already in here, but I'm going to go through it because I need you to make sure you contextualize everything. So Dolan, the group leader, cited political interference as a major reason for withdrawing the project. Okay. However, now I've decided to go with a P however structure for my paragraphs here, which is absolutely fine. As long as you've got balance according to the assessment standards, then you can get into level 4. Where you end up with level 4 will be down to the examiner, but realistically, you want to be aiming for level 4. Make sure it's contextualized, answer the question, make sure you finish it in 12 minutes. Hopefully you get mid-level 4 or higher, and that's A-star territory if you continue with that trend. However, positive political engagement can support and enhance FDI attractiveness as initially seen when Khan welcomed the project in 2018. Now, if I would have just ended my sentence there, it's just knowledge. A bit of balance, but it's not very contextualized. You don't need three chains of argument or anything daft in your however for this, because it is just a counter argument to the point, but it can't just be theory. We need context. So if in doubt, shove a little bit of evidence in there, but you normally can just write something that's in context. Don't just write by the textbook, because it will be abstract. My point two, I'm not going to be writing these headings, by the way, in my essay, but just as a point, legal and environmental considerations are crucial for FDI. So it answers the question. This is PESTLE, using your knowledge of PESTLE. And we now know what we're going to be talking about in our analysis paragraph. So legal frameworks that are perceived as fair and efficient encourage FDI. That's sort of a repeat of here, by the way. The Sphere project faced legal challenges, emboldened for chains of argument, particularly in the planning approval, creating a perception, chain of argument, of unpredictability. Environmental concerns, especially regarding the potential impact of LED lights, context, I'll put some more in later, but that's probably enough for now, further complicated the project, reflecting how environmental sustainability has become a significant consideration in investment decisions. The end of the chain of argument comes back to the investment decision, which is linked directly to the key term of FDI. If I would have just ended up with sustainability and not linked it to investment decisions, I'm not linking it to the hook in the question. The evidence is product was criticised for causing significant light intrusion, resulting in significant harm to the outlook of neighbouring properties. Now, remember, I've put two lots of evidence in here now, not necessarily needed for a 10 marker, but it does evidence how you can use quotes from the case study. A bit long with these evidence paragraphs, by the way, but we're also revising technique. However, a strong legal framework and commitment to environmental sustainability, that's our point, can make a country more appealing to FDI by offering predictability and responsibility. It's sort of a rework of the answer. Now, at this point, you should be thinking, is this abstract or is this contextualized? Well, I'm thinking that this is abstract use of the theory. This is probably not a brilliant however. The previous one talked about Mayor Khan. Down here is talking about what's in the textbook. So in some ways, the however is there. It's sort of a rework of what I've already written. It's not brilliant, to be honest with you. So yeah, look at the first one's a great example. Second one, not so good. Overall, at this point, I go back and quickly reread the question. Let's make sure we're going to answer the question, not some other question, or do one of those TikTok answers that always ends in profits or sales. Overall, the impact of these PESTLE factors, using your knowledge of PESTLE, has been negative on the UK's FDI, answers the question, and it might reduce future investment from non-UK firms in the future. Now, believe it or not, that's really important, because it's not just about investment, is it? It's investment from outside of the UK, which brings it back into the definition of FDI. We then think about our justification, and in this case, we think of the alternative. Without addressing the significant impact of political and legal factors, as highlighted in this, the attractiveness of the UK for FDI could be severely compromised in the future. This case demonstrates how political instability and a complex legal environment can deter potential investors. Ease of doing business, theme 4. Okay, now if we were to consider the marking scheme, and I've put up a couple of different ways we could have answered this question, and obviously I've gone with this one, even though this second, however, I do believe wasn't that good. We need to look through here. Accurate knowledge throughout understanding, is it PESTLE, is it FDI, is it in context to do with the business behaviour going on in the case studies? I think so. Are there a minimum of 3 chains of argument? This is a 10 marker. You do not need 5 chains of argument. Save that for the extended chains of argument or the well-developed. Those are the words that we'll see in the 12 mark standards. So 3 chains of arguments, fine. The example I presented here had more than that, so we are fine. Assessment is balanced. Well, we did an in favour P, and in favour P, and then a couple of howevers, but this second however wasn't great. Is the answer balanced? Yeah, I think it is. Is it perfectly balanced? I don't think so. I think it's a tick there, but I'm going to put a tick and a question mark, mainly because of this. Because as an examiner, maybe, if I was an examiner, I would be going, oh, it's not perfectly balanced. I'm probably not going to give it full marks. Quantitative, well, not brilliant use of quantitative, but there's not a huge amount of in the case study. Loads of qualitative information, shows an awareness of competing arguments, especially that justification that is without this being sorted for the future, leading to a supported judgment. Okay, so it's considering the alternative in that conclusion. The alternative could be, if things don't change, this could not look well for FDI in the UK, especially if you're keeping up to date with current affairs and you'd have read a lot about Activision Blizzard and Microsoft takeover, and how the Competitions and Markets Authority nearly stopped that deal going through. Okay, hopefully